Hey, welcome to a new episode of Skin in the Game. This is your host, John Simperman, with my co-host,
Tim O'Shea. You know what we're talking about today.
You know,
John knows it's my favorite topic.
For our avid listeners of Skin in the Game, and by the way, it is your favorite topic because you do coach.
I coach it.
And it's an up-and-coming and I think a very, very topical sport, that being flag football.
You got it.
So who do we have today as our guests?
Well, I'm happy to. John and I juggle who brings in the guests here, and so this week it's my turn.
There you go.
I'm proud of this. I recruited a couple of good ones. We have good ones every week, John, but a couple of good ones, particularly for flag football and tackle football, too. We're going to welcome two guests from USA Football, Scott Hallenbeck, who is the CEO and executive director, and Callie Brownson, who is the Senior Director of High Performance and National Team Operations at USA Football. That essentially means, John, that Callie is the general manager of USA Football's soon-to-be Olympic teams, men's and women's, for flag football.
That's pretty cool.
It is. It's really cool. And Callie's a former Cleveland Browns coach, a former Buffalo Bills coach. She's among the first women to be in the NFL as a coach and among the very first to be a position coach in the NFL. So she's a modern-day historical figure in the sport of football. And she's easily, as a Scott, one of the most influential people in the sport of football, tackle or flag. And by the way, her position has her in charge of both USA teams, both tackle and flag. So,
well, that's great.
You can tell I'm excited. Wordy intro because these two do a lot, and we're going to talk about a lot.
It's great. I'm I can't wait for our conversation, and I think it's what makes it most interesting is the growth of flag football. And we talk a lot about trending sports and growth in sports, and I know we don't joke because it's serious. Pickleball is continues to be on the rise. Golf's having a day, I think, thanks to golf simulators and kind of that COVID brought a lot of people back out to the golf course. But humming along through all of that has been flag football, and the fact that now the NFL is behind it, big deal. The fact it will be in the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, that's a big deal. So it's a sport that continues to grow, and it'll really be great to get their perspective. And here's what else is happening in flag football. And for any of our listeners, really across the country, you're seeing high schools add the program. You're seeing colleges now add flag football as an NCAA sanctioned sport. So, yeah, it's got a lot of wind at the sails.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because USA Football and the NFL and other organizations that work with flag football or that promote flag football are working with the NCAA to turn it into a scholarship sport. But there's other collegiate levels and other collegiate leagues where you see that happening now, where you see teams starting. So it really is becoming it's a huge deal at the high school level, a very big deal at the college level, and it's a big sport internationally too. Something, John, I learned about it very early when I started coaching is two things. One, it is, although there are transferable skills from tackle football over to flag, the obvious things, you have to be able to pass, you have to be able to catch and run.
Hand-eye coordination.
Hand-eye coordination,
sure.
The very basics. Both coaching and playing, you can't necessarily translate too much over. The plays are different. Obviously, the size of the field, the number of players on the field, 5 or 7, all of those things are different. The way that you tackle in football is very different from the way physically you get ready to pull a flag. And these sound like little things. When you are a coach and you go from one to the other, big difference. So there's a lot of development going on in a coaching pipeline to get really well-trained coaches working with flag football players at all levels. And on, for players, which will be more men than women on this, but for players who are tackle players who try to switch over to flag, it doesn't always work.
Well,
not so easy.
I'm glad you brought that up, because you take a look at the men's flag football national team. I don't think they've lost a game since 2018.
Right.
Or at least lost a tournament since 2018. But at the same time, now you've got a lot of the NFL players, especially the skill guys, the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, saying, "I can't wait to now be an Olympian." Well, Tim, there's no guarantee, nor is it going to be easy for an NFL player to make the flag football U.S. Olympic
Yeah,
team.
I kind of want to say good luck with that. Good luck trying to get out there and outskill these guys at their game. A quarterback might be able to do that. And a wide receiver theoretically could too, although when you're trying to evade a tackle, it's very different when you're trying to, evade a guy trying to wrap his arms around your waist and pull you to the ground, or your ankles and pull you to the ground, versus, somebody who's just reaching out to your hips and trying to grab a flag. Here's another thing in flag football too, and we're getting nitty gritty on the X's and O's here, but again, little detail, huge difference. When you're being rushed, or when there's a blitz, they don't usually use the word blitz, but when somebody's rushing you and you're the quarterback, nobody's there blocking you. So whoever it is who's going to rush in and try to sack you, pull your flag, they raise their hands so they're coming. And man, they just go right at you.
Yeah.
So the quarterbacks don't have a couple of 300-pound guys keeping other people away from them. There's just somebody barreling down on you. You've got to keep your wits as a quarterback in a way that NFL quarterbacks do not need to do.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to bring that specific topic up with our guests, because I think our guests will also have a little bit of say in who makes the team. So it'll be really great to get their insights there. And I also want to dig into, are they friend or foe with, for example, Pop Warner football, right? Because Pop Warner is in the tackle football business primarily for youth. And now you've got this hot upstart in flag football. Are they friend? Are they foe? Are they frenemies? How are they working with tackle football to ultimately help grow the sport?
Yeah, and how do these two sports relate? They're not the same exact sport. And I don't know if you can say baseball and softball are a similarity here, but it's a lot of the core skills are the same. A lot of the rules resemble each other, but they're not exactly the same game. I think with USA football, what we're going to find is that they want to get people playing football under the umbrella, whether it's tackle, whether it's flag. But what that actually looks like, we can get into it.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. So please stay tuned. We have the leadership of USA football, specifically on the flag football side, joining us here on Skin in the Game. So please stay tuned.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Skin in the Game. And Scott Hallenbeck and Callie Brownson from USA Football. So happy to have you.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We are always happy to talk football. We are always happy to talk flag football. And I know you've got a lot of that going on and beyond, too. So let's lay it out for everybody. Let's start right there. We've got the Olympics coming up. We've got flag football bound for the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. Talk to us a little bit about your work supporting that, and and some of the other big priorities that you have going on right now at USA Football.
Well, if it's okay, maybe I'll start by just sharing a little bit about the history of USA Football. So we are about what we all love, all of football. So certainly tackle and flag. For 20 years, we've focused on what we often refer to as the foundation of the sport. So really working with all the youth leagues, high schools, you name it. We don't run any of those groups. We're agnostic. We want to help sort of all boats rise. We principally focus on sort of safeguarding the sport, so health and safety, education, things of that nature. Long-standing role and responsibility there. And then alongside that, for many years, I actually worked for the U.S. Olympic Committee way back in the day. I'm going to date myself, in the early 90s. And I've always felt like we wanted to move USA Football towards that official role as a national governing body. So we've hosted tackle national teams and competed internationally and so forth and so on. I won't go into a lot of detail there. But thankfully, around the 2019-2020 period, we spent some time with our International Federation of American Football, and we ultimately spent some time with the IOC, International Olympic Committee. And long story short, realized that tackle football would have just more challenges getting into the Olympics. And a lot of the movement was towards, especially in the team segment, was for smaller teams. So you probably know all about rugby, that traditionally they're a 15, player team structure, and now they're at sevens. Rugby's 10. I'm sorry, lacrosse is 10. They're going to sixes. Long story short, we said, wait a minute, we've got this other amazing discipline of football called flag football, 5-on-5. And they're like, that is intriguing. Let's explore that. And then, the NFL got involved, and in no time, really shocking to me, in a few short years, the International Olympic Committee approved the idea, to your point, of flag football being in the 2028 Olympics. So we find ourselves there. And the next thing we know, we're sitting with our friends at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and we're working ourselves through the formalized process to become the first ever national governing body for football. So as you can imagine, there is a lot going on. We're now immersed in the Olympic movement. We're immersed in association with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and of course our friends over at LA 28 Host Committee. So yeah, we're just really exciting times for the sport at large. I'll pause there and invite Callie to come in from the sport specific sides. Look, I probably doesn't require an introduction. We are blessed to have Callie on with us. She brings just an incredible wealth of experience. Played in our national team. She could probably go into that, as well as, of course, coached at the highest level. Our friends in Cleveland know her well, and has just been an amazing addition to our team, bringing just really professional expertise and helping us evolve in our high performance national team side of the program really to a professional level. Well, it's an ongoing exercise that we have, but we're striving to continue to evolve and become more and more sophisticated. And she's really at the forefront of that with our collective team.
Yeah, thank you for that, Scott. And I think Scott hit the history too on the head. And I did have the pleasure and the honor of representing my country with the women's tackle national team, and so it means a lot to me. But the way that I look at it too, when we talk about the question going back to where we're at now that 2028 is on the horizon, we just finished our 2025 cycle. It's already 2026. So a lot of the work that we're doing is we got to go. It seems like it's a couple of years away. To me, it's right at the door. So a lot of what we're doing right now, to Scott's point, is figuring out how to professionalize and create an elite program. Because at the end of the day, the number one goal is 2 golds on the podiums there in LA, and we're hard at work through that process right now of creating the best teams that we can, but more importantly, the best process that we can throughout the year to ensure that those athletes that take the field in competition year in and year out, and definitely in LA in 2028, are the best product and the best representation of what we mean here in the United States when it comes to flag football.
Well, that's incredible. The timing for me this is almost a perfect storm for the rise of flag football. Obviously, a few years back, injuries, concussions were in the news. The international growth of the game of football, right? This makes it more accessible to an international participation. And then obviously the perfect storm of the timing with the Olympics. I mean, it all kind of came to a head, this perfect storm, which I think has really, and Scott and Callie, you would tell more than I, it really helped drive this growth in participation.
Yeah, I would start just quickly by saying, look, our friends at the NFL have been just incredible. I often refer to the growth of the sport as sort of rocket fuel.
Right.
They're the ones feeding the rocket fuel. It's between the NFL and the NFL clubs, right? I referenced the Browns and the Bills, and you name it. All 32 clubs are doing so much in their respective communities and states and so forth to help drive the growth of the sport. And then, as you said, even internationally, you hit the nail on the head. The idea, look, for 20 years, we were trying to help our international federation grow tackle football around the world, and we definitely saw progress, but it is a lot easier, more cost effective, much quicker to grow flag around the world. I liken it to soccer or European football. And so and you're already seeing the results of that. I mean, it's incredible to see the growth, and particularly on the girls to women's side. So yes, it's fascinating. In 30 plus years being in and involved with sport, I've just never seen anything scale this quickly.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, it's been really awesome to see how much it's grown over the past couple years, few years. It's a sanctioned sport in 16 states now for high school, for girls flag. A lot of the NFL clubs have been helping with that movement and pushing it along amongst the rest of us in the flag community. And going back to Scott's point too, internationally, what makes me the happiest about all of this is football is the most accessible it's ever been to people now across the world, and girls and boys. I mean, it's the most access that people have to the sport of football ever, and that's only growing daily. So it's just a super exciting thing to be a part of.
Callie, talk a little bit about the pipeline to develop those elite national teams. And I know, as you know, and you and I met a few weeks ago, I saw your team playing Team Canada, and I mean, it was just a scrimmage game at halftime of an NFL game, but what an incredible athletic performance in front of 70,000 fans. So you've got elite athletes now, and as you said, you are trying to build the best possible teams, plural, for 2028. So on the men's and women's side, what does that pipeline look like, and what are you doing to build that up?
Yeah, great question. So it's really an organization-wide project because we have an incredible group of people here at USA Football running our national team development program who work throughout the year to identify really great athletes, both at the youth level through the adult level. And those athletes get elevated up through our process. It's a very intentional process to identify, but also intentionally develop. A lot of the events that we have throughout the year are not just in the intention of evaluation, but in development and coaching and instructing and educating on the game as much as we can. We field our junior national teams, so 17U boys and girls, 15U boys and girls. So you have the age ups that come through that from our internal process, which are athletes that we get to integrate into our process, our national team culture, from the youth level, and then obviously as they age up to the adult level, get the opportunity to develop and earn a spot on our adult teams. And that's kind of the internal part of this pipeline. But then there's the external facing part of it too. We're constantly on the look for the best athletes. And I say athletes because there's talent transfer opportunities. There's athletes out there. I'll speak on the women's side who are playing collegiate flag football right now. So we have constant eyes on all things around to ensure that every year when we move into our trials process, we are putting the best possible players in the pipeline to compete for these spots, to compete.
And I guess I'm going to speak more to the high school level. Are these athletes coming from soccer, lacrosse, or is it new folks, or in this case, female side, who are just adopting the sport? I'm just trying to get a sense of where the sport is falling in that kind of the seasonality and that interscholastic seasons, and what are you seeing, Callie? Where are the girls coming from? Are they coming from other sports, or is this something who's jumping into a new sport for the first time?
It's a phenomenal question because I think we're seeing ourselves kind of in the mixture of both, right? You're seeing this talent transfer of multi-sport athletes from the youth level who are playing soccer, who are playing basketball, track and field. But you're also, one of the unique things we saw at our junior national team trials this past year was you're starting to see this new exciting resurgence at the youth level where there are young women who have been training specifically for flag football since they were 6 now. That's where we are with the sport within the country, is specialized training now that exists in flag football, which we didn't see before. But it's a mixture of both. So we're getting athletes who are multi-sport athletes who are phenomenal athletes across the spectrum of athleticism and skills and attributes, who are also now, taking their chances in the flag football sphere because of those translatable skills that exist across certain sports. But then you're also seeing people who are, young athletes, both, boys and girls, who are specializing their skills in flag football. And there are actually flag football specific trainers. That's such an exciting time for our sport that they're getting started younger than ever now and focusing on sharpening their skills in the flag game.
Does USA Football engage with the NCAA, in the effort or the push to see flag football become a Division I sport?
Absolutely. So I think all governing bodies work closely with the NCAA, particularly where, and the women's side where it starts, was the Emerging Sport for Women program. I'm sure you're aware of women's wrestling and women's hockey and triathlon and a variety of examples. Again, what sort of speaking to the rocket fuel nature of this, they have already committed. They, the NCAA, are already working with their, their constituents, Division III, Division II, Division I, and saying we would like to see a championship be established in really record time. I mean, ideally around the Olympics. So call that 4 years, 5 years. I think that's a fraction, probably at least half of the amount of time that it traditionally takes. So we do work with them, among others. Again, the NFL is involved, and RCX is involved in that, a variety of parties. But again, like you're seeing really across the country, more and more schools at all different levels are very eager to add women's flag as a varsity sport. And all of that, just think of the collection of all of that. So to your point, I mean, high school now is growing, college is growing. All of that is just a bigger and bigger repository and feeder system for us. And then we tap in with, resources that are necessary to elevate the quality of play, to developmental tools and camps and clinics and a variety of those kinds of things. Ultimately, with a whole scouting overlay, again, a professional approach to then identify those best athletes, bring them up into our pipeline and continue to grow. So like this entire ecosystem is like a bunch of puzzle pieces that are starting to come together in a cohesive way. And it's really impressive to see it all unfolding sort of around the same time.
And Scott, on that note, because you represent a lot of all USA football, are you seeing any, and I just don't want to be the Debbie Downer here, but are you seeing any negative effect on the youth or the Pop Warner leagues where kids who may have played tackle football are now just playing flag? Just how does that all lay out? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Again, excellent question. And I think a more than appropriate question.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, look, to be candid, we've had various, what I'll call sort of traditional football folks say, well, you'll cannibalize tackle football, particularly at the high school and maybe probably more at the high school. And I think what's happening is the opposite. To your point, even the youth level, which look, 5 years ago or so, they were the first to say, no, not flag football. We don't want that, right? We're only worried about tackle. The opposite is happening. We have something that we call the football development model, which was designed in concert with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. It's what everyone else around the world calls long-term athlete development. So it was, but in football, it was also designed to address, as you guys already referenced, the real world of managing, contact, right? And parents wanted to know that there could be alternatives to quote unquote play football. And so the football development model is designed to be a progression. Non-contact, progress to limited contact, progress to full contact. So think flag and non-contact. Limited contact is a small-sided game called rookie tackle, which is like 6 or 7 athletes playing tackle, but it's small-sided, very excellent way to sort of start your tackle football experience. And then, of course, full field, 11-a-side tackle. So more and more, particularly youth tackle leagues, are realizing that, wait a minute, this is just widening the funnel, widening the aperture. I'm getting more kids playing. And just like you'd probably expect, they started with boys. Wait a minute, I'll get boys flag going. And all of a sudden they're realizing, wait a minute, there's so much demand for girls, I've got to add girls. Mm-hmm. And then last but not least, I would share with you another sort of really interesting dynamic is they're realizing that if you look at the economics of just running your youth football league, community-based youth football league, you're actually making as much, if not more, margin in your flag that you can reinvest in tackle. So your entire business model is improving and it's becoming more sustainable. So a long answer to a short question, but it's actually helping dramatically sort of raise all boats, or at least the disciplines of tackle and flag, with those that are opening their mind and their eyes to, wait a minute, we've got to look at football in a whole fresh new way. And it's really having, I think, a positive impact.
I think that's great. That's great to hear, because I didn't really expect that. But then when I think back, I spent a lot of my career in the sport of professional hockey and roller hockey and street hockey. Getting more sticks in hands really helped drive viewership, attendance, fandom, and I do see that correlation with flag football. It's it's a football in hand, and it's so I could see how that could, to your point, kind of rise all boats. That's great to hear.
Well, and John, you also have excellent experience there. I mean, candidly, as we're new to the national governing body world, we, of course, spend a lot of time talking to those that have been really successful, and USA Hockey is unequivocally one of those. USA Basketball is another. So anyway, but that you've sort of been involved with, I guess, an ecosystem, if you will, NHL all the way to USA Hockey, et cetera, collegiate community, et cetera, that is really sort of a best practice and a standard in how you want to develop the sport and how you align with, the various interested parties and constituents along the way, how you try to create a cohesive model. And they've done an excellent job of that.
Yeah.
And I want to dig into the fan reaction to flag football too. And Callie, I'm going to tee up this question for you. So you and I met a few weeks ago at a Sunday night NFL game, Buffalo Bills game in Buffalo. And your team, Team USA, was playing Team Canada in a halftime exhibition game or scrimmage game. I was watching from the press box, which gives a great view of the field and absolutely no sound whatsoever. It's soundproof in there. What I saw, and I want to ask you to take it from here, is more fans staying in their seats during halftime than I have ever seen in a regular season game. There was a huge crowd watching your team and Team Canada play that game, which was maybe 10 minutes long or so, maybe even a little bit less than that. And it struck me as a really, really powerful 10-minute experience for everybody there. You were down on the field, though. What was that like, and what was the fan reaction?
Yeah, awesome question, awesome experience. I honestly have goosebumps just kind of reliving it a little bit here, but I think the powerful part started well before the halftime piece even started. It was our women got the opportunity to hold one of the banners during the national anthem, and and again, a huge thanks to the Bills for that opportunity and giving our women and Team Canada that opportunity to be on that kind of a stage. But as they went out to carry the banner, every single section that they walked by was chanting USA, USA, USA. It started there. And I think that was a great moment because then everybody was linked into, well, I want to watch them play now at halftime. And to your point, yeah, that's the most I've ever seen anybody. And again, you got to think about it. It's a night game. It's a big deal. Things were kind of close. It was a good game. A lot of people like to get out of their seats and go stretch their legs, and they insisted in staying in their seats. It's the most full I've ever seen a stadium at halftime because they were locked in. They wanted to see it. They were, whether it be curious, engaged, whatever the word is, it didn't matter. They stayed in their seats to watch, and it was really, really powerful to be a part of that and to know that in that moment there was that many other people now who knew more about not just our women's team but our sport. The fact that it's in the Olympics is, if they didn't already know already, they left the stadium knowing that it was a competitive game because it was. We got about, I think it netted out at about 8 minutes and 20 seconds on field between the two teams. And it was 8 minutes and 20 seconds of people being able to watch high quality flag football and understand it at a higher level and, create that fandom around it and that support. And that's super important. And it meant everything to our women's team to hear those USA chants as they came off and that sense of pride and all the hard work that they put into it and what they get to represent. It was really, really powerful. And again, my hat's off to the Bills for creating that opportunity for both of our teams, but also creating the opportunity for more people to understand what this is all about. And education is everything when it comes to that. And we are very confident in our sport. We're very confident in our teams that if you give it that chance to just witness it once, you'll want to keep watching. You'll want to keep wanting to be a part of it. So that was a huge moment.
Congrats on the win, by the way, John. Team
that's
USA
great.
won.
Well, I think the only group that was not happy with that experience was the concessionaire because no one was at the concession stands buying the beer and the hot dogs.
Yeah. And there was a lot of, I want to say too, we have a lot of listeners and viewers in Canada, and the Bills draw a lot of fans from Canada too. There was a lot of love for Team Canada too, which is a good thing. I mean, it showed not only the fan engagement, but, Callie, the other cool thing that day for me was, and you'll remember this because I was walking with you, when you and both your team and Team Canada were walking from essentially like through what's called the Boulevard, John, which is a kind of a tailgating fan experience area outside the stadium. And everybody was in USA and Canadian gear. I mean, your athletes, Callie, were playing catch with the fans and, keep it on the move because they had to get to the field house for a little bit of warm up. But there was a ton of fan engagement right outside too. Not surprising at all. It's what I'd hope, what I'd expect. But I got to tell you, when you take that whole experience, connecting with the fans in person outside the stadium, holding the banner, which I can only imagine what an experience that was for your athletes, and then playing that game and having tens of thousands of people stay in their seats to watch it. I can imagine what the Olympics are going to be like.
I was thinking the same thing. It was just a taste of how incredible it's going to be to be on that stage, to be doing it, obviously in the U.S., in L.A. And honestly, a lot of our women had, similar feedback of this is what it feels like to have your moment in front of one of the largest crowds and be able to do the thing that you love. And I'll share this pretty funny story. I was in the tunnel before we went out for the halftime exhibition, and I was talking to one of our players, and I said, "Are you nervous?" And she said, "This is the easiest part. Playing football is the easy part for me. I was more nervous to hold the banner." So it was really incredible for them to go out and do the thing that they love and that they do so naturally in front of a crowd and garner that kind of respect. And so, yes, it was a nice taste for what the future holds for us.
Well, you may.
I would just add one other point to that, if I may. We're seeing almost a blending of what the kinds of experiences you might see in, I don't know, European soccer or international soccer, right? Where you've got the fans, with the flags and sort of everything that goes with it, and the chants and singing, and it's bringing another sort of fandom dimension to the sport as well. So when you do see us play a Mexico or a Panama, or you name it, it just adds another layer of excitement to football, in this case flag football, that if you haven't had a chance to see that yet, you're really going to love that as well.
And Scott, actually, you brought up exactly the kind of the segue I was looking for. From what I understand, and Tim, you've coached against some young Canadian female teams who are very talented.
Incredibly. Yes. Shout out to every Canadian team we've ever played.
What else are you seeing from other kind of hotbeds? What are you seeing across the globe, and where is the sport also taking off, and who is, quite frankly, that big competition come LA?
So far, it's unequivocally what we refer to as IFAF Americas, International Federation of American Football Americas. So Mexico, Canada, US. But depending on if you're talking about men or women, it can change. There's certainly a number of really talented European teams. Japan's coming on quickly. The fastest growing, though, may very well be China. I think this will put the growth of the sport and sort of the economics behind it in perspective, and maybe just the commitment of China to develop, especially Olympic sports now. I mean, they took one of our top coaches, men's coaches, and I'll just say, paying him a significant sum to build their program, and they're spending like 4 weeks in camps, things that we would dream to have right now. So the point being is the economics, the commitment, the investment of time and energy and money to grow the sport. A lot of countries are on the front end of that. You may already know that once you become an Olympic sport, now in many countries, your National Olympic Committee now will make an investment in that sport. So, again, a few short years ago, all of these, what we call member federations, like USA Football, Football Canada, you name it, all of us are, doing our best to raise the money to sort of, develop the programs and go to our competitions, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's 180 degrees different. I mean, they all have funding from their National Olympic Committees, and they're getting sponsors, and, it's really, really exciting. So my point in all of that is that sort of what we know as top teams, sort of now and certainly in the past, can quickly change. But generally, the leaders are this sort of more North American segment at the moment. Well, another example, our friends to the north have already identified a former CFL coach as their men's coach. So they're already bringing those sort of professional expertise and structure and process into their new model. And we're asking Callie, how's that going to work? And it's so yeah, it's sort of everyone's looking at things in a fresh new way, and we just have to sort of keep our eye on it. We are constantly saying, we have to just continue to level up and continue to improve, hence the focus on sort of a professional operation. But it's fascinating to see the level of commitment, support, and now investment in the sport around the world.
Callie, I want to ask you, as a woman who played tackle football, where do you see opportunity in the future for girls and young women who do want to play tackle football? Is that still going to be something they can pursue, or do you see everybody overwhelmingly going toward flag?
Yeah, I think, just as Scott talked about earlier with the impact on youth tackle and Pop Warner, and I think that's a phenomenal question. I think that the love for women's tackle still exists, and it's a special community that there's such different games. At the end of the day, that it all comes down to the fact that tackle and flag are different, and there's still a massive love, especially in the women and girls community, for tackle football. So, I don't think that, just as Scott noted on the youth football side of things, I think that they're different markets for different athletes who want to do different things. I think also, to the point that he made, the great thing about flag, at least at the youth level and especially the younger youth level, is at least flag gives access to be able to build those raw skills, throwing the football, catching the football, spatial awareness, some of those educations and introductory portions of the game to young girls who can learn the game of football and understand some of the body control aspects and some of those just core fundamentals, and then segue into tackle if they so wish. Both of those are opportunities for women and girls, and something that we obviously take very seriously at USA Football, to just provide access to football no matter who you are and no matter which direction you want to go. There's avenues for that.
And Callie, aren't we seeing that the women's tackle leagues, the professional leagues, are in fact engaging in flag, helping to support flag in their areas, and there's crossover athletes. So again, there's starting to be a real openness and commitment to just the different disciplines of football.
Yeah, I would say both of the top women's tackle leagues in the countries now, during their championship weekends, actually hold flag tournaments as an involvement in it. So there's collaboration and cohesion there that I think is great, because again, it's access to women and girls into football. At the core end of the day, that's the most important thing, and providing different avenues so that, whichever one is more your speed or more what you want, you have access to it. And so it's been really awesome in the women and girls community to see football expand in the way that it does, whether it be tackle or flag.
Yeah, and Scott, to your point, I think it's that approachable gateway entry into the sport. And, if a young woman wants to take it to the next level, that opportunity's there, but they got a taste for the game at a, pretty lower, point of entry.
Agreed.
It'll be interesting too. And Callie, I don't know if you've seen any crossover, but here on Skin in the Game, we've talked quite a bit about the growth too of women's rugby, with the sevens and the bronze medal, and I just think personally it's great that all these different sports are available, for women to play and to compete in.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been cool to see. I would just venture to say women's sports in general over the past few years. It's really, really incredible to see. And yeah, the rugby case study alone from Paris is just so cool to watch. And hitching on some really great names who now have become household names for women's rugby, which is just very cool for the sport.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a nitty-gritty question here about flag football, and John's going to laugh because he knows this comes from me coaching. As Scott and Callie, as you know, there's 5-on-5 and there's 7-on-7, and for people out there who aren't familiar, when you play, and I'll say this from a New York State, where I'm sitting right now, perspective, when you play high school flag football, that's 7-on-7. When you play football, say through NFL Flag, which is run, Scott, by a company, RCX Sports, that you mentioned a few minutes ago, that is 5-on-5, and the rules change along with, with obviously the playbooks. So just as the two of you and your team envision and build the future of the sport in the training pipeline, I know from a very low and admittedly amateur level that training young athletes for 5-on-5 and 7-on-7 is a little bit, that you can do both. You certainly do both, but it's a little bit different. And I'm wondering if you're, do you see the sport moving toward a standardization of those rules?
I would just share that from an International Federation of American Football perspective, there really weren't any options. We shared the notion with the International Olympic Committee of sevens and fives, but and this may be too much information for all the guests and listeners, but basically, in short, there is a rule within the International Olympic Committee and the Olympic movement of a 10,500 athlete cap. Hence, again, your point about rugby and others having to sort of shrink down their sport size. So we knew that going with fives gave us that much better of an opportunity to get into the Olympics. And for what it's worth, it had been and has always been the discipline for the International Federation. So it was very straightforward for us to stick with fives, although certainly in this country, we know sevens is also a strong option. So Callie, you can probably get a lot more of the specifics around the style of play and so forth and so on.
Yeah, certainly. And I think you guys touched on it. There is the ability, and we have, women on our national team who played collegiately in sevens and translate over to fives, and it's, nothing for them and it's seamless. There's a lot of translatable aspects to it. I think you hit it on the head when you say the rules are different, therefore the playbooks are different. At times the field dimensions are different, so the technique and the fundamentals change slightly. There are nuances to it, but, again, it's at the high school level. NAIA is 7-on-7 as well. The sevens game, and it's so it's something that we track on for sure. And part of what we think of is we've almost lumped those sevens players into this elite athlete transfer and understanding what is the transfer process for a sevens athlete to five. Let's identify those points that are sticky points. Let's identify the easy wins in translating those players, and when we go out and recruit, be sure that if they come into the national team program, we're ready for that transition from sevens to five. So something that we're hyper aware of as we continue to look at the best athletes in the country, knowing that most likely if they're playing at the high school level, or if they're at NAIA, or if they're even playing intramural flag for some of these bigger colleges before it becomes an NCAA thing, that they're coming from the sevens game. But we have plenty of success stories of the transition from sevens to fives that we can consistently study and just make sure we're doing the best we can to give those athletes the best success when they come over to the fives games, knowing that it's our international discipline.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging me the the very nitty-gritty question. But John, I promise there's a lot of people out there who are wondering about
Well, and actually, I think there's also a lot of people wondering, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but as we look to 2028 in LA, has there been anything laid out on the tryouts? Is this something the NFL players may be involved in? There's a lot of theories out there, but what's the company line right now on tryouts and the makeup of the teams for both on the men's and the women's side for 2028 in Los Angeles?
We are sort of right in the midst of sorting through that. There are, again, a lot of moving parts and a lot of constituents that are involved. So at a minimum, USA Football is responsible to select, train, and ultimately lead both the men's and women's team to the Olympics. With that, we also have to build out, to your point, a process for ultimate player and team selection that will be approved by the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. As part of that, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have been studying how does a USA Basketball and the NBA do it? How does a USA Hockey and the NHL do it, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short is absolutely NFL players can participate, as you've probably heard many times. In fact, right there, I thought Josh Allen came across incredibly sincere about wanting to represent his country and what that means. It truly is probably the only thing left for some of these incredibly talented, successful NFL players who've been fortunate enough to win Super Bowls and that sort of thing. So this is a brand new first time ever opportunity. So we are working closely with the NFL about, what is the best process? How do we obviously respect, it's still the NFL season now is almost entirely year round, right? So how do you squeeze in something small called the Olympics into that whole exercise? Think again about really deconstructing the mindset of an NFL player, which is tackle, into, I got to pull a flag, and then reconstitute that, reconstruct that, a week later to go back and start the entire NFL season. So there's a lot to this. It is, if most NFL athletes will tell you this is unequivocally a different game. So just how do we work together? How do we coordinate that? There's a lot of layers to it. A lot of things are working out, but suffice to say, unequivocally, we are incredibly excited and really honored that the NFL and the owners would want their NFL players to participate and represent Team USA here. And we just have to sort out what that looks like. But in the end, there is a trial/selection process that eventually will lead to a series of training camps. And eventually a team will be whittled down. Now, you may know this, but traditionally we have 12 players per side. In the Olympics, we're only going to have 10. So that adds another whole dynamic and dimension to this. We really need to look for or dual athletes that can play sort of both sides or multiple positions to be as efficient as possible. And again, Callie knows that world much better and certainly can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of that, I mean, it's something that we're continuing to navigate. At the end of the day, it is our responsibility to put the best 10 players on the field in LA. And we're excited for the opportunity to explore all of those options and make sure that we are putting the best 10 players on there. So, we continue to navigate all of that and make sure that we go into 2028 with the best process we can so that when we load up for LA, we've got nothing but confidence.
Callie, you're a former NFL coach, and you know how NFL play. Not that NFL players think any one way, but you better than most people out there can project into the mind of a National Football League player. I'm sitting here thinking, man, there's 10 slots, and if it is opened up to guys in the NFL, they're going to be competing like hell to get into this kind of thing. That's what I'm thinking about. I mean, can you see that, just projecting into the guys that, you've worked with for what, 5 or 6 years?
I think there's certainly some interest. And again, Scott alluded to this. There's a lot of players that chose the path and the career path of football and in the NFL, and obviously have had immense moments to take their career to being some of the best athletes in the world at a sport that takes a lot of skill and a lot of talent. The Olympics was never something that was on their mind as a possibility because they chose the tackle football route. Now it is. And it crept up on everybody, and they have the opportunity to play. So absolutely, I think it garners interest from a lot of people, even outside of the NFL. It garners interest from a bunch of people who want the opportunity to be a part of such a historic moment and utilize their talents and skills for it. So yeah, I do think that there's interest, and those who are interested will want to compete for those spots. It goes back to the other part that Scott alluded to. They're also aware it's a different game. They're also aware that there's aspects of it that they don't understand yet, and so it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. But we want competitive athletes. We want talented and competitive athletes on that 10-person roster.
And you've got some tremendous athletes who are, not in the NFL, who are playing this game every day, who are practicing this game every day. So, yeah, it's not use a basketball term, it's not a layup that an NFL player makes this roster.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see it all unfold. Like I said, we're just excited, and our job at the end of the day is to go win gold medals, and we're excited to see how this whole picture unfolds. Right now in front of us is 2026 in that process, and going to Worlds in Germany next August, and putting the best team together for that, and continuing our process and learning as much as we can as we go, so that we're ready when 2028's here.
We got to wrap up in just a moment. I do want to ask you both one question about the coaching pipeline. You mentioned earlier that the Team Canada is drawn from the CFL, Canadian Football League ranks, to build out their coaching, right? And, again, Callie, I'm thinking, NFL coaching. Scott, you've been around, pro and top amateur sports for a long, long time. What's the coaching pipeline look like here, and how much overlap could there be with, or is there, or will there be with the tackle game and specifically the NFL game?
Yeah, I mean, we have examples right now of current coaches on our national team rosters who've also coached tackle, and made that transition, and honestly, still to this day, coach both simultaneously. The transition is certainly there, especially from the coach perspective. So we anticipate that interest will also be involved from a coaching pipeline standpoint. Again, it's just like the player aspect, understanding and learning the game, especially from a coach and a play caller standpoint, to have as much confidence as you can in the fives game, not just the rules, but the situational football aspect of it, to have the most confidence in how you're calling and managing a game. But the transition is definitely possible. We have real time examples of it in our program and in our pipeline right now, and definitely foresee that we will continue to have garnered interest in that, and us on our end creating the best possible resources we can to get coaches that are interested in getting into our pipeline, especially really good coaches in their certain disciplines, up to speed on the fives game, and establish that amount of confidence in them so that they could go out and coach games.
Great. Well, listen, we appreciate you both being here.
It's great to get more people, more kids playing the game of football. So keep up the great work. And Tim, I want to make sure we bring back Scott and Callie over the next year as the sport continues to grow and evolve.
Yeah, we know you're going to be busy with those Olympics coming up, and not that you're not busy already, but
we appreciate the opportunity to tell the stories. I think we've all said there's just still a lot to learn about this sport, and so we very much appreciate and value the time with you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. We'd be happy to jump back on with you guys.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Skin in the Game. Hey, welcome back to Skin in the Game. And Tim, thank you for bringing in Scott and Callie from USA Football. Really great conversation on where the sport of flag football stands.
Yeah, incredible conversation. I hope, John, you don't mind, and everyone out there, you don't mind my very nerdy questions about fives and sevens, but I'll tell you, when you're coaching the game, it makes a big difference. I mean, what do you make of the growth of flag football?
I was really surprised and happy to hear that the growth of flag football hasn't cannibalized tackle football, especially on the boys' youth side. So it seems like we're really using flag football as kind of an entry point to the game.
Yeah.
And then the kids have the option, hey, I'd like to take it to the next level. So really turning what I thought would be a negative actually into a positive.
I was happy to hear that too, and I wasn't. Honestly, I thought, if I had a guess, I would have thought that answer was going to go in a different direction, more along the lines of, hey, we love the extra participation,
right,
and hugely extra participation in flag football, but we are still worried about tackle and not so much. What'll be interesting on the men's side of the game, of the flag football game going forward, is how much overlap is there between young men who are playing tackle football and young men who are focusing on flag football. And just to complicate that that a little more, and push it further into the gray area, women's flag football is a sanctioned high school sport in 16 states. Admittedly, I'm not sure if it's a sanctioned high school sport on the men's side in any state. I think, and I may be wrong, and people out there can correct us, or we'll circle back on this. If you're a young man in high school and want to play football, you're playing tackle.
Right.
So will there be opportunity for teenage boys in high school to continue playing flag football? Or is that something they're going to have to come to later or do in youth leagues? There's probably more clarity needed in a widespread way on that too.
Yeah. Well, you're even seeing here, across the country. I mean, if you look down in Texas, these small communities play 6-on-6 tackle football, right? You're seeing other communities where participation in tackle football has begun to deteriorate, and you're seeing schools join other schools to put enough players on the field. Right. So, if there continues to be this erosion in tackle football on the boys' side, I just think at some point you might see more boys flag football programs just to fill that gap.
Yeah, to fill that. Yeah, I mean, because we all know. I mean, the boys are going to want to play football. There's not going to be a shortage of boys who want to play the sport in some form. Now, they might choose to go into, as we've seen, for a variety of reasons. They might choose to go, focus on other sports during the season. But given how big the NFL is, and that's not slowing down anytime soon, there will be kids out there who want to play football. So, now they've got two options. That's great. I would imagine, and now we're really crystal balling this, if the tackle numbers don't go up, you might see the NFL at some point focus in on that part too.
Yeah,
but that's down the road. I mean, it's great. I mean, young women are playing this sport at an incredibly high level, and in incredibly high numbers. Young boys are too. This is a real success story.
It's real success, and I bringing pop culture into skin in the game. I will say, as a marketing person, flag football is going to do more long-term for NFL fandom than Taylor Swift.
Oh, easily.
Right,
easily. And I'm a Taylor Swift fan too, which, yeah, I am. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to qualify it. I thought you were going to rip on me. I was going to stop you. No, 22 is a good song. But yeah, no, I mean, flag football is going to draw so many. It already has. It's not even going to. Flag football has drawn in so many young football players, and it's turned fans into athletes. It's turned athletes into fans. It's absolutely the best thing that people have going. I want to refer people, or I should say that the NFL has going. I want to refer people back to an episode that we did, gosh, John, I think it's been almost a year, with Troy Vincent, who is the executive vice president of the NFL, a former player, and in charge of all things football for the NFL, including flag football. And he's put a real big focus on flag football in the ownership meetings on down years ago, and so you just see it paying off.
Yeah,
and the NFL knows how to market.
Well, it does, and I think as when we were talking to our guests, we talked about this perfect storm, and you got to remember back 4 or 5 years ago, concussions and injuries, and there was a lot of negativity and negative, outspokenness about, youth participating in tackle football. And this flag football came in just at about the right time to at least start to offset some of that negativity. And then the other positive is, and I know this from traveling internationally, the physical sport across the pond and down under is rugby. So converting rugby players to tackle football, that was tough because they already had their game. But when it came to flag football, that opens up a whole new way for international fans or international youth to get to understand the sport. So the perfect storm, which, by the way, put a bow on it, 2028 Olympics, really it all came together at the right time.
Oh, for sure. And also the transferable skills as a rugby athlete over to flag football. I'll give you another one that you'll appreciate because you're a hockey guy. My flag football team played another high school team that was full of soon to be D1 hockey players. That game did not go well for my athletes. But what I saw very quickly is not only were the young women on the other team great athletes, but the skills hockey players have, like the sense of balance, the spatial awareness, the ability. Here's something really important in flag football: the ability to just swivel a little bit to avoid somebody grabbing that flag and quote unquote tackling you.
Right.
Those are all skills hockey players have. They
avoiding being checked, avoiding having the flag swiped.
Yeah, just like cutting, deking and cutting right around somebody. There are certain sports out there, and we're naming a couple. There are more that translate nicely over to flag football. And of course, as flag football continues to grow, those skills are going to translate nicely over to other sports too. So it's good for the game of football. It's good for the NFL. It's good for the Olympics. It's also good for youth sports in general. It
is. The only folks, if athletic directors listening in or governing bodies of other sports, just, the growth of women's flag football is going to take some of those athletes from soccer and from lacrosse and pull them into flag football. It's just, especially if the seasons line up.
Yeah, which is a
together.
lacrosse issue.
Exactly.
I think, at least where we're sitting here, in New York State, both of them, I think, tend to be spring sports. There might be some variety about that, but but of course, we've got listeners in other states, listeners in Canada, and it's, the seasonality of this is going to vary.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I think that league organizers, athletic directors, parents out there should be thinking about too, in talking to the organizers and the athletic directors, do all these sports need to be full-time sports? And I'm throwing this out there rhetorically. Could a kid, rather than playing lacrosse and practicing it every single day, or practicing and playing flag football every single day, could they alternate? Could these be, I hate to call them part-time sports. It sounds like I'm devaluing the sport, and I don't mean that, but I guess part-time commitments. I am not, there's certain things you can't necessarily do every day. It's going to wear down your body anyhow. Right. You don't see singers singing 3 hours a day. You'll lose your voice. Translate some of that thought over to sports and give kids a chance to play more than one sport. There might be something to that. I do not expect a lot of people out there to agree with that. But having been a teacher, parent, and coach, I could see where it might work.
Yeah, it may be. So that's just something to keep an eye on. The sport's going to continue to grow, especially with the backing of the National Football League, especially with the participation and support of the NFL clubs. So it's only going to continue to grow, and it's exciting. At the end of the day, as we talk about on this show, the more opportunities for kids, the more opportunity for women to participate in the sport, the more accessible the sport is, and flag football is accessible because you don't have the burden of equipment. You don't have the burden of ice time.
Right.
So I think it checks all those boxes in a positive way. So I want to thank our guest, Tim. I want to thank you for bringing him on board. It's always great to talk growth of flag football, and I learned a lot on today's episode.
Oh, for sure. So Callie Brownson, Ryan Hallenbeck, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have you back, and John, we'll be back next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Skin in the Game.